Welcome back to our channel, True Crime Enthusiasts. I'm John Garfield. We've already learned about the first person executed in 2006, Charles Victor Thompson, and the next one will be this guy. Over a decade earlier, on May 1, 2013, in a quiet Bedford apartment, Cedric Allen Ricks snapped during a heated argument with his common-law wife, Roxanne Sanchez. What started as words escalated into horror. He grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed her repeatedly, in the neck, back, chest, arms, and face, leaving her lifeless in a pool of blood. Shockingly, he turned on her innocent sons, left a haunting scene. Such a real monster, but what twisted path led this ordinary man, with no prior criminal record, to unleash such unimaginable savagery on those closest to him? And in the years that followed, did Ricks ever truly confront his demons, or was the system's inexorable march to execution the only justice left? Before we begin, take a moment to tell us how you found this video. Was it recommended to you, or did you search for this case yourself? If you find our content informative and worth watching, please like this video and share it with others who follow true crime stories. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for upcoming investigations, full case breakdowns, and in-depth crime documentaries. First, let's begin by looking at the central figure of this story, Cedric Allen Ricks. Who was he, and how did an ordinary man reach the point of committing a massacre inside his own home? I've gathered information from court records, trial testimony, and investigative reports, and what stands out is this. There were warning signs long before the violence exploded, but most of them were seen. Nearly all of them were ignored. In the gritty underbelly of Cook County, Illinois, Cedric Allen Ricks entered the world on September 8, 1974. Born into a working-class family amid the towering shadows of Chicago's skyline, Ricks was a black man who would grow to stand at 5'7" and weigh around 172 pounds, with piercing brown eyes and a mop of dark hair that often fell unkempt. But beneath that unassuming exterior lurked something darker, something his own father would later reveal in chilling courtroom testimony. During the 2014 trial, Ricks's dad painted a portrait of a troubled kid from the start. Irritable, quick to rage, prone to smashing things in fits of fury or withdrawing into eerie isolation. He was always on edge, the father recounted, his voice echoing through the Tarrant County courtroom like a ghost from the past. These weren't just childish tantrums, they were early warning signs of a storm brewing deep within. Ricks scraped by in school, making it only to the 12th grade before calling it quits. No diplomas, no steady jobs on record. Just a nomadic existence drifting from state to state, chasing some elusive fresh start. Remarkably, for a man who'd later become synonymous with unimaginable brutality, Ricks had zero criminal record before 2013. No arrests, no brushes with the law. He was a blank slate, or so it seemed, until he landed in Texas, that vast expanse of opportunity and hidden dangers. There, in the suburbs of Bedford, his path crossed with Roxanne Diana Sanchez, a 30-year-old Hispanic woman whose life was already a tapestry of resilience and motherhood. It was around 2012-2013 when their worlds collided. Roxanne was no stranger to hardship. She had two young sons from a previous relationship, Marcus Figueroa, a bright-eyed 12-year-old full of energy, and Anthony Reyes Figueroa, his 8-year-old little brother, innocent and playful. They lived in a modest apartment, the kind where laughter could echo off the walls on good days. Ricks moved in, and soon enough they welcomed a child of their own, Isaiah, a bubbly 9-month-old bundle who completed what looked like a picture-perfect blended family. For a while it was bliss, or at least the illusion of it. Court records would later unveil a home video played during the trial, captured just 3 days before the nightmare unfolded. In it, Roxanne beams with that radiant smile, her dark hair framing a face full of hope. Ricks cradles baby Isaiah, his broad shoulders seeming protective rather than threatening. Marcus and Anthony dart around like typical kids giggling in roughhousing, oblivious to the fractures forming beneath the surface. But true crime stories thrive on the shadows behind the smiles, and this one was no exception. Dig deeper, and the cracks appear. Ricks carried a hidden history of violence against women, a pattern that emerged in damning trial testimony. Ex-girlfriends spoke of beatings, of controlling rages that left bruises and broken spirits. With Roxanne, the arguments started small but escalated like a gathering thunderhead. She'd push back against his volatility, fighting to maintain stability for her boys. Roxanne was the rock, the dedicated mom who worked tirelessly, juggling jobs and child care, pouring her energy into creating a safe haven for Marcus, Anthony, and little Isaiah. She dreamed of a better life, one where love didn't come with fists or fury. Ricks, meanwhile, wrestled with demons that went beyond mere temper. Experts called to the stand in 2014 dissected his psyche like a crime scene. One researcher, drawing from neurological studies, argued that Ricks's brain was wired for violence, a predisposition etched into his very gray matter, possibly from genetic factors or childhood traumas that scarred him invisibly. He wasn't just angry, he was a powder keg, primed by years of unresolved pain. By early May 2013, the tension hit a boiling point. Ricks decided to bail. He pawned some jewelry, Roxanne's, perhaps, netting $700 to fund his escape from the apartment. It was the final straw, a betrayal that ignited the fuse. Roxanne confronted him, her voice likely laced with frustration and fear for her family's future. No one could have predicted how that simple spat would erupt into carnage, how a man with no prior convictions would shatter everything in a frenzy of steel and blood. But in the world of true crime, the calm before the storm is always the most deceptive, lulling victims and readers into a false sense of security before the horror strikes. Now we move into the core events of the case. Before we go any further, prepare yourself. What follows includes details that are disturbing and difficult to hear. This is where arguments turn into actions, and a normal apartment becomes a crime scene. From this point on, the story is no longer about background or warning signs. It is about what actually happened. On May 1, 2013, Roxanne Sanchez was in the midst of her routine, tending to her two older boys, Marcus and Anthony, while their baby brother Isaiah was safely tucked away with relatives. But tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Cedric Ricks stormed through the door, his face twisted in frustration. He'd just pawned some jewelry for cash to fund his planned exit from the home, and Roxanne wasn't having it. Words flew like sparks, accusations of betrayal, demands for explanations. "Why would you do that?" she pressed, her voice edged with hurt and anger. Ricks felt cornered, controlled, his ego bruised. He shouted back, and she didn't back down. In true crime tales, it's often these mundane flashpoints that ignite into something monstrous, where a heated exchange crosses an invisible line into irreversible horror. In a blur of rage, Ricks bolted to the kitchen, his hands fumbling for the first weapon in reach, a standard butcher knife, its blade glinting under the fluorescent light, the kind every household has for slicing roasts or chopping vegetables. He wheeled back into the living room, eyes locked on Roxanne, who stood defiantly between him and the kids. The first strike was swift and savage, the knife plunging into her neck. Blood erupted in a warm spray, splattering the walls and soaking her shirt. Roxanne screamed, a guttural cry of shock and agony, her hands instinctively clutching the wound as crimson flowed between her fingers. "Cedric, stop," she begged, her words gurgling through the pain, but the plea fell on deaf ears. His fury had taken over, a red haze blotting out reason. He stabbed again and again into the soft flesh of her neck, the back of her head, her chest heaving with each thrust, her arms flailing in futile defense, her face contorted in terror. The room filled with the sickening sounds, the wet thud of metal meeting skin, her weakening gasps, the metallic tang of blood thickening the air. Roxanne crumpled to the floor, her body twitching in the final throes, a pool of red expanding beneath her like an accusatory stain. Little Anthony, just 8 years old and wide-eyed with innocence, froze for a split second before instinct kicked in. He rushed to his mother's side, tiny hands reaching out, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mommy," he wailed, his voice piercing the chaos. But Ricks, lost in his rampage, turned on the boy without hesitation. The knife flashed down, slicing into Anthony's tender neck, then his chest, blood blooming across his small frame. The child tried to scramble away, his sneakers slipping on the slick floor, but Ricks pursued relentlessly. More stabs, deep, vicious wounds that tore through muscle and bone. Anthony's cries faded to whimpers as he collapsed beside Roxanne, his blood mingling with hers in a gruesome embrace. In the annals of true crime, these moments are the ones that haunt the vulnerability of a child, the betrayal by someone who should have been a protector, turning a home into a slaughterhouse in seconds. Marcus Figueroa, at 12, was old enough to grasp the nightmare unfolding before him. He didn't cower. Instead, he charged forward, a brave little warrior desperate to shield his family. "Stop, Uncle Cedric!" he yelled, his voice cracking with fear and defiance as he grabbed at Rick's arm. But the man shoved him aside like a rag doll and unleashed hell. The first jab hit Marcus's raised hand, defensive wounds that would later tell the story of his fight. Then came the onslaught, stab after stab, 25 in total, raining down on his arms, neck, back, and chest. Blood poured from the gashes, soaking his clothes, the pain exploding like fire through his body. Marcus staggered, fell next to his mother and brother, his world narrowing to the throb of injuries and the metallic taste in his mouth. Yet, in that haze of suffering, survival instinct sparked. He went limp, eyes half closed, breath shallow and silent, playing dead amid the carnage. Ricks, breathing heavily, hovered over him, delivering a few more probing stabs to ensure the job was done. The boy didn't flinch. Satisfied, Rick stepped back, surveying the devastation. Bodies sprawled in a tableau of death, the once cozy room now a blood-soaked horror show. For a fleeting moment, perhaps clarity pierced the fog. Rick stared at the scene, Roxanne motionless, her eyes vacant, Anthony still and silent, Marcus seemingly gone. No remorse surged through him then, no frantic call for help. Instead, he snatched Roxanne's car keys from the counter, wiped the knife haphazardly, and fled into the fading daylight. As he sped away toward Oklahoma, the weight of what he'd done began to settle. He picked up his phone and dialed family, his voice shaky but matter-of-fact. "I killed them." It wasn't a confession born of guilt. It was an admission, raw and unfiltered, the kind that echoes in true crime interrogations as the perpetrator's first crack in the facade. Back at the apartment, the silence was broken only by the drip of blood and the faint rasp of Marcus's controlled breathing. Investigators would later describe the crime scene as a butcher shop, walls streaked with arterial spray, floors slicked with congealing pools, furniture overturned in the struggle. Roxanne and Anthony had bled out from multiple lacerations, their vital arteries severed in the frenzy. Anthony's wounds were particularly heartbreaking, fatal gashes to the throat and torso that no child should endure. Marcus, enduring his vigil in the gore, waited until the engine roar faded. Then, summoning strength from some deep reserve, he crawled to the phone, his bloodied fingers dialing 911. "They've been stabbed, my mom and brother," he whispered, his voice faint but urgent. Paramedics arrived to a scene straight out of a slasher film, rushing the boy to the hospital where doctors marveled at his resilience. 25 wounds, yet none had hit the heart or major vessels. A miracle amid the madness. Physically, he would heal. Mentally, the scars ran deeper, a lifetime of trauma etched into his young soul. Years later at the trial, Marcus's testimony would be the linchpin, a chilling narrative delivered from the witness stand. "I saw him stab my mom first, then Anthony," he recounted, his eyes steady despite the quiver in his words. "I tried to stop him, but he stabbed me too. I played dead so he'd leave." The courtroom hung on every syllable, jurors shifting uncomfortably as the boy relived the terror. In true crime fashion, such accounts humanize the horror, turning statistics into stories that demand justice. This wasn't random violence. It was the explosive culmination of domestic abuse. Experts dissected Rick's pattern, a history of battering women, controlling behaviors that simmered until they boiled over. With Roxanne, the argument over money and his impending departure lit the fuse on a long-fused bomb. Local papers like the Star-Telegram splashed the story across headlines, framing it as a stark warning about the hidden perils of intimate partner violence, how it escalates from slaps to stabs, claiming lives in the process. To summarize this section, we see a series of unusual and alarming behaviors from Cedric Allen Ricks before, during, and after the attack. These actions raise critical questions. How did law enforcement respond once the violence occurred? How was he tracked, located, and taken into custody? And ultimately, did the system succeed in delivering justice? To answer those questions, we move to the next part of the story. Returning to the investigation itself, I collected information from the investigative phase and court proceedings, and what emerges is a complex picture.
Yeah.
There are details about Cedric's mental state that are unexpected and legal decisions that remain controversial.
Yeah.
This next section examines how investigators built their case, how the justice system responded, and what this case reveals about the intersection of psychology, violence, and the law. In the immediate aftermath, as the Bedford apartment still reeked of fresh blood, Tarrant County detectives sprang into action. Ricks's frantic phone confession to family members became his fatal mistake. The call traced back through cell towers, pinpointing his location on the open road. Within hours, Oklahoma Highway Patrol pulled him over in Garvin County, his hands cuffed without resistance. No accomplices, no elaborate plan. This was a lone wolf's rampage, impulsive and raw. Extradited back to Texas under heavy guard, Ricks faced the weight of capital murder charges, killing in the course of another felony, a ticket straight to the needle if convicted. But jail life hit hard first. Video footage from May 2013 leaked and splashed across local news like FX 4 captured the brutal reality. Ricks, freshly booked, emerged from a holding cell with his face a swollen mess. Two black eyes blooming like dark flowers, bruises modeling his skin from a savage inmate beatdown. Justice served early, some whispered online, but for Ricks it was just the opening act in a decade-long descent. The trial unfolded in the sterile confines of Tarrant County's 371st District Court, presided over by Judge Molly Westfall, a no-nonsense jurist known for her steady hand in high-stakes cases. By mid-May 2014, the guilt phase wrapped up swiftly, the jury swayed by a parade of damning evidence. At its core was the heart-wrenching testimony of Marcus Figueroa, now 13, stepping onto the witness stand with the poise of someone far older, his voice trembling but resolute. "He stabbed my mom first, then Anthony," the boy recounted, eyes locked on the jurors as he relived the nightmare. "I tried to push him away, but he kept coming. Stabbed me 25 times. I played dead so he'd stop." The courtroom fell silent, save for muffled sobs. Some jurors wiped tears, the raw emotion cutting through the legalese like a knife. Prosecutors painted Ricks as a monster, his solo act of terror irrefutable, backed by forensic blood spatter and that traced confession call. No room for doubt. The verdict came down. Guilty as charged. Then came the penalty phase on May 16, 2014, where the stakes skyrocketed. Ricks, shackled and stoic, took the stand in a move that stunned even his own team. "I want to die," he declared flatly, rejecting a plea deal for life without parole. "I don't deserve to live." It's a chilling admission, the kind that true crime aficionados dissect for years. Was it remorse, manipulation, or genuine despair? Lead prosecutor Robert Huseman didn't buy the theatrics, labeling Ricks a psychopath in closing arguments, hammering home his pattern of escalating violence against women. Exes testified to past assaults, building a timeline of abuse that made the jury's blood run cold. This marked Tarrant County's first death penalty push since 2012, a bold statement in a state where executions were as routine as rodeos. After 7 grueling hours of deliberation, the gavel fell. Death. Ricks didn't flinch, just bowed his head, the room electric with tension as family members of the victims exhaled in quiet relief. Defense attorneys fought back with science, calling a Harvard-affiliated researcher from the Center for Law, Brain, and Behavior to the stand. The expert delved into Ricks's neurology, arguing his brain structure predisposed him to violence, abnormalities in impulse control regions, likely forged by childhood traumas. Ricks's father corroborated, spinning tales of a turbulent upbringing, explosive tantrums, isolation, early signs of a fractured mind. He was always wired different, the dad testified, voice cracking. It was a Hail Mary bid for mercy, painting Ricks not as evil incarnate, but a product of biology and bad luck. Yet, the jury remained unmoved. The brutality outweighed the brain scans, the pleas falling flat in the face of such carnage. By May 19, 2014, the transfer was official. Ricks shuffled into the infamous Polunsky Unit's death row, inmate number 99593, etched into his fate. Solitary cells, 23-hour lockdowns, the endless wait for appeals. The true crime grind of Texas justice had only just begun, a slow burn toward that lethal injection chamber. But in those early days, as Rick stared at cinder block walls, the echoes of Marcus's testimony lingered, a ghost in the machine of his unraveling life. Behind the unforgiving walls of Polunsky Unit's death row, Ricks settled into a grinding existence of isolation. Locked in a cramped 6-by-9-foot cell for 23 hours a day, with just one fleeting hour outside for exercise or a cold shower. The appeals process became his lifeline, a labyrinthine battle against the inevitable. From 2014 to 2017, he mounted a direct appeal to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, only to see it dismantled on October 4, 2017. Undeterred, state habeas corpus petitions stretched from 2017 to 2020, but the CCA slammed the door shut. Federal relief proved equally elusive. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected his claims on November 12, 2024. His final gambit, a petition for certiorari at the U.S. Supreme Court under docket 247038, met denial on October 6, 2025, exhausting every avenue and cementing his doom. By October 2025, Tarrant County's Judge Ryan Hill etched the end in stone. Lethal injection on March 11, 2026, in Huntsville's infamous chamber. News outlets pounced on October 22, framing the case as a stark cautionary tale of domestic terror. A December 13 update from state records locked it in. Rick's one of 3 condemned souls, queued for 2026. As 2025 fades, Rick stares down the barrel of oblivion. The true crime saga's grim coda. It begs the eternal question: does the needle deliver justice, or just another layer of vengeance? For grieving families, it's retribution. For opponents, a barbaric echo of the crime itself. The curtain falls, but the shadows of doubt endure. In the end, this true crime tale exposes the fragility of family bonds and the abyss of unchecked rage, leaving us to ponder: can execution mend the shattered lives of Roxanne, Anthony, and survivor Marcus? Or does it merely perpetuate the cycle of death? Justice, it seems, remains a haunting enigma. That brings today's video to an end. If you feel this case was important, informative, or worth discussing, please like and share this video so more people can see it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters. And subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories coming next. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.